you could be subject to questioning again.
Oh, that comes from the baggage pickup also.
Yes, it could be as...
How can anything come from picking the baggage?
No, they might have some information, like as he was saying, the canines are there at the airport and they can track any baggage. And if they think that there is something in the baggage, they can ask the person to go in for another inspection with the baggage.
Yes, it could be behavioral, how the person is acting.
Yeah.
All of our officers on these specialty teams are trained in behavioral recognition. So they could just look what doesn't look normal. And they will engage that passenger. And just by the preliminary questions, it could be something that they would want to speak to further about. But there is no preconceived questioning that this person is going to be referred at this time. CBP doesn't engage in any of that type of that aspects. It could be just random, or it could be something that already the person has committed here in the United States before that they'll need to address now on this trip back.
I tell you why I asked this question. I recall, some time ago, maybe a couple of years ago, one of the very famous film actors was coming, and he was sent to a secondary inspection and also the baggage check. And so a lot of people all over the world started asking questions. But I mean, after the second inspection, there was no problem at all. It was probably same name.
Same name, that's what I think
I think
also.
it probably was just same name, probably CBP was looking for, and that's what.
Yes.
That's what triggered
and that normally, it does happen, unfortunately. It's such a common name,
Exactly.
you could be subjected to a little extra questioning, and normally the person then, that's rectified, and he's allowed to proceed.
Very good. Okay, this is a question, let me see. This has to do with applying for a visa also at Department of State, but maybe some connected with this issue here with CBP. So if applies for a visa is processed through IAFIS at the consulate. Upon entry, the exit technology, they go into that. It provides a biometric, when the person applies for the visa, there's a biometric information. Now, it is all inserted right in the visa. It's still, through that, the CBP office can see the biometrics, the fingerprints, the photos and everything. And they verify the system and they cross-check and all that. And that person is also sometimes subjected to the secondary inspection. Let me rephrase the question. When an American consul issues the visa, he goes through all these checks to see. It's very clear, nothing at all. After 2 days, he gets into the flight. And he comes to the airport and he gets a secondary inspection. So what could have happened in these 2 days or 3 days or 5 days between the issuance of the pass visa and arrival and the CBP looking into maybe it's behavior, maybe something different, nothing to do. I just want to understand if you can explain that what might have happened or what could happen in some situations.
Yes. Yeah. Let me first say that that process that you have explained helps to legitimate that travel.
Okay.
That helps the person get through the primary inspection faster. And as I said earlier, it's a very small percentage of people actually get referred to secondary.
Right.
But in regards to that situation, all that happens in the embassy is that you create an online questionnaire, you answer those questions, you submit your fingerprints and your photo. Yes, that's verified. So yes, we know that you are the person who submitted in the embassy.
Yes.
That doesn't always mean that you submitted the truth to the embassy. So what you may have told the embassy is not what you have just told the officer there. So in that regard is where that's possible scenario where the person can refer to secondary.
There can be discrepancies between what he has said to the embassy and also to the
exactly.
CBP officer.
I see.
Yeah.
Also, for what I can see, that there is some more information here in CBP that the consul did not have at the time of issuance of the visa.
Well, that information will be gained from the officer speaking to that passenger.
Correct.
That's the first time where CBP gets to encounter that passenger and ask them what is the purpose of the trip. And in some regards, it may not be what they had spoken about with the consular official.
Yeah, we've seen
But I wanted to add that and stress that this system that has been put into place has greatly improved the efficiency of CBP and the processing to where our wait times are remarkably low due to this process, because we now know who that person was that submitted their fingerprints back in their home country, and their fingerprints are matching right here. So we do know that this is the same person in front of us.
Right.
And obviously, also understand there are more than one agencies, a lot of agencies. Information, adverse information coming from any of the agencies could trigger.
Exactly, a whole host of agencies.
And the council may not be going through all that information coming from all the agencies. Some of the information that is coming to CBP probably was not available to the consular officer at the time of issuance of the visa.
It could very well be that's the case.
Yeah.
But normally it's that, like I said, CBP is the first place where the U.S. government on its own soil gets to talk to that passenger coming into the United States.
You are the doorkeeper. You have to open the door for the passenger to come
Exactly.
in.
As what we
Right?
traditionally
The council
say.
give permission to travel and go to the door and knock the door, and you decide.
Exactly. The visa just allows you to knock on the door. It's CBP that answers the door and makes sure that you have the proper visa to get into the United States.
Very good.
Okay. If a traveler is repeatedly stopped, delayed, or subjected to such inspections because the government has inaccurate or incorrect information in the database or confusion with some other person with similar names, whom should he or she contact to seek clearance of his name from the database so he's not stopped the following times?
That's a very good
Yeah.
question. First, we want you to contact, as I said before, the DHS TRIP website.
Okay.
And it's www.dhtrip.gov. And you'll go onto that website and you will be able to explain your situation and that matter would be looked into. You can also speak to the supervisor on duty and we'll be able to provide you a Freedom of Information Act address also that you can write to help clear your name.
Okay. So there are two ways that they could do it.
It's a very
One is
common
to,
question,
yeah,
you know.
because this happens
People
sometimes.
contact
Yeah.
us,
It does happen a lot.
Yeah.
See, like I'm the mentor of the Immigration Lawyers Association, and a lot of lawyers call me and some of these questions that my client, every time he comes in, he gets stopped. Every time he comes in, gets stopped, and after that, they let go. So I said there could be same name issue, there could be some issues, and that there may be a process under which a person can request for removal of his name.
The clearance of his name from in the database, so the next time he is not stopped so often and so frequently. Usually, I know because once they go into secondary, sometimes it does take time, as you said too.
Yes.
So I think some of them might find it inconvenient to them that this is happening to them every time, despite clearing their name the previous time. So it's a good thing that these are two avenues that they have got, and I'm sure they could use these avenues to write to the CBP in one FOIA. And the other one is an independent agency, you said?
Well, it's under the Department of Homeland
Okay.
Security. It's at the department level.
Right.
And even the Freedom of Information Act paper we will give you all refers back to the Department of Homeland Security.
Okay. So
And I recommend that website. That definitely is the website to go to.
The
It's a-
DHS TRIP,
Yes,
yeah.
DHS TRIP. It's a standardized website.
Okay.
And you will be taken seriously when you post a reply onto that website.
Earlier, you were saying something about a chain of command, like person goes to the primary, and then he goes to, sometimes some people go to secondary, and then there's a supervisor to whom a person could contact, one of the officials, and then some cases, supervisor even comes to you to discuss something.
Yes.
How that works, and I mean.
Yeah, in our chain of command, it's similar to a military chain of command. I'm what's considered a deputy chief officer. I'm a second-level supervisor. Above me, I report to a branch chief.
Right.
And that person I belong to the enforcement branch. We also have a passenger processing branch. In that, above that, we have an assistant port director
I see.
for air operations.
Right.
And then above that is our port director, Ms. Adele Fasano. She's in charge of both the seaport and the airport.
Okay.
And she reports to our director of field operations, Mr. Robert E. Perez. We have 20 field offices throughout the country. And then they report to Washington, D.C., to our assistant commissioner for field operations. And then he will report to our deputy commissioner and our acting commissioner right now within CBP.
So there's a reference here that you told me about primarily criminal information,
Yes.
right? So tell us a little more about the criminal enforcement. I know you are overall related to all other issues as well. It's not just that, because I know your hierarchy, the primary inspection, secondary inspection, then there are supervisors, and the supervisors report to you.
Yeah,
so they must be
second line,
reporting you on various things, not just criminal.
Yes.
Okay, but criminal is a focus. Would you say that?
Yes, that is my focus.
Tell us about what is meant by criminal.
Sure. The Criminal Enforcement Unit is a little team within CBP where we primarily focus on anybody entering the United States or returning back to the United States, such as a legal permanent resident, who has a criminal history that could now render them inadmissible to the United States. And my unit will focus on intercepting those persons and determining whether or not they need to be referred to an immigration judge, or that their criminal history is now going to render them inadmissible and they're going to be refused from the United States.
So would you recommend, because we had some instances, very frequent also these days, that somebody had been convicted of a crime.
Yes.
It could be a petty offense, it could be a very small thing, DUI, or it could be more. Now, when that person is obviously going to end up in secondary inspection, I believe.
Yes.
If we say that, definitely. In the secondary inspection, then, this officer, is that a senior officer than what is at the primary inspection? In the secondary?
It's a whole host of officers. Traditionally, a criminal enforcement officer is an officer who has at least
Experience.
5 or more years. On my unit, the average time is 8 to 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So the officer is pretty much an expert in immigration law as well as criminal law as it relates to the immigration world.
So let's say this guy who has committed a crime has been convicted, or not even convicted sometimes. It may show that he was arrested and fingerprinted, and maybe he was not acquitted or whatever it is. The officer is going to naturally ask him the questions,
Yes.
right? You would recommend that that person who has that kind of background should carry with him at least some papers, a disposition, whether he was acquitted, he was convicted, what papers he has, that he can show to the officer. That may help the officer in making a determination about his admission.
Yes, definitely. I would recommend that. What is referred to as a judgment of conviction,
Right.
which is usually given to you by the clerk of the court that you were seen in. And if you know you have this criminal history and you do travel frequently, you should travel with that. Because what would normally happen in that aspect, if the person does not have that on them, we will have to do what's called a deferred inspection. And that's where your inspection is sort of stopped at the port of entry for a time for you to go out and obtain that judgment of conviction and bring it back to us, usually in 60 to 90 days, that it would allow you now to show if you were either convicted or acquitted of that offense.
So you would say most of the time, you just don't put them in a plane and send back. Most of the time, these people get a deferred inspection and they are told to bring whatever you tell them, the disposition or the papers, or sometimes they can call their attorney also. But I know that attorney representation may not be permitted, but I know that sometimes the CBP officers say, okay, let me talk to your attorney to find out what is the story here.
Yeah, what normally happens if at that time, there's 2 aspects we have to discern here. First is a legal permanent resident returning back to the United States, as well as a non-immigrant who is here visiting. Unfortunately, a non-immigrant with a criminal history would not normally be given a deferred inspection.
Yeah.
They'll be refused entry into the U.S., and they'll need to take that up with the State Department at their local embassy. A legal permanent resident, on the other hand, that's where the deferred inspection would take place generally, and that's where we would have the opportunity to find out and to do a little more research and obtain that judgment of conviction.
I see. That's good in a way, that at
So
least
the
an
permanent
opportunity is
resident,
given to
yes.
the person to clear
Exactly.
up his record and bring the documents and explain everything.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Especially for the permanent residents, that's what they would do it. Only for the permanent residents, that's the option, is given to a permanent resident, deferred inspection, so they have an opportunity to get the documents and bring it back to you.
Correct.
Yes.
Now, you said non-NIVs, the non-immigrant visa
Yes.
holders, are almost refused, or maybe not. Say all depends upon also on the crime. Maybe it was a petty offense. Maybe it was a DUI only, something like person drunken driving or something.
Yes.
Would you, on a case by case, make the decision it is really not a serious thing for which he should be denied admission, or is going to be denied definitely?
Well, it's definitely a case-by-case basis.
Case-by-case basis.
We have our own set of CBP attorneys that we would consult with the attorneys on each offense that we see, and then a determination would be made whether or not to allow that person in or to refuse their entry.
Now, you earlier in the last, I think, interview, you had mentioned that a person who is nothing to do, no problem, no crime, no nothing at all, except same or similar name. Same
Yes.
name, of course, maybe problem, similar name. Now, that person you did mention in the last program may be able to approach some authority and request for the removal of the name from the database. Could you just tell our viewers what kind of, how do they approach and what is the name of that organization?
Yes, that's not a problem. We recommend that you use the DHS TRIP process. That's www.dhstrip.gov. And that process will allow the passenger to rectify the situation of a common name. They could go onto that website. You can find it also at www.dhs.gov.
Right.
And on that website, you would log your complaint. And you can also speak to a supervisor at the port of entry, a first-level supervisor, and he'll be able to provide you with information for Freedom of Information Act, where you'll be able to rectify that situation also.
Can that person get an assistance from attorney to go and talk to the supervisor about removal? I'm only talking about removal of the name from the database.
Well, that process would be held outside of CBP.
Oh,
It's
I see.
DHS.
It would
Yeah.
be DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, and you have a right to obtain an attorney to help in that situation, and someone will contact you from that. We also have what's called a personal service manager, PSR,
Yeah.
and they will be able to assist you in that situation also. And they're on site at the port. And if there's any kind of complaints, as well as a first-line supervisor, they're trained in dealing with those complaints also.
So there is a recourse.
Yes, there is.
It's very nice.
Okay.
Madhvi?
The next question is about a traveler. Is a traveler permitted to make a call to a family or member to advise him of his arrival and that he's been delayed, for certain reasons at the airport? Also, can an attorney be permitted to contact a CBP on behalf of the traveler who's coming into the U.S. and there might be some issues?
Now, what Madhvi is saying that family is outside,
Yeah, they're waiting.
to pick up, and they were waiting for 1 hour, and almost every passenger is out. This is a normal thing. And they say, "What happened to my brother? Where is he? Where is he? Where is he?" So the brother inside the secondary inspection is also concerned. At least he wants to let them know that it's going to take me some more time. I'm still in the. Is it?
Is it
permitted? You
permitted?
permit him to make a
Well,
phone call?
what normally happens if the passenger, and in rare occurrences where it does occur, is held for more than 3 hours, they are entitled to a phone call.
Okay.
By which the CBP officer will contact a family member of that passenger's choice and explain to them that they're still undergoing CBP process.
Okay.
Now, even further, if unfortunately they are going to be refused from the United States, we are mandated to give another phone call.
To
where
advise.
and that person will, once again, the officer will advise the person of their choice that they will not be entering the United States. And further, we are also mandated to contact that local country's embassy and
Okay.
alert them that a foreign passenger is being refused entry.
So they have that information.
So which is good actually, because I know a lot of people are concerned that when somebody is sent back, how are they informed? But this is a good thing that, CBP does make gives the opportunity to let the passenger contact a relative or a friend and tell them this is a situation with me that I have to go back or whatever it
Yes.
is. So that gives them they have the information and they're not just kept in,
Ms. Donnie, I still have a little issue on that. 3 hours is a long wait. By that time, the family's gone back home or something.
Well, as I said, that very rarely occurs.
Really, really occurs. Okay.
Normal processing in secondary is under an hour.
Oh, under an hour.
And under
Okay.
an hour.
That's not bad. That's not
If you're there for 3 hours, obviously there's an
Yeah,
issue
yeah.
that we're